The rain fell hard against the windows of Parker's diner. Maria cleaned the counter again and again. It was getting late. She was 26 years old. She had worked at this small restaurant in downtown Seattle for 3 years. She didn't make much money. It was barely enough to pay for her tiny apartment and her classes at community college. The dinner rush ended hours ago. Now it was just the sound of rain and the old fridge making noise. She looked at the clock. It was 9:45. Just 15 more minutes until closing time. Her feet hurt, her back hurt, and her wallet was almost empty. She had $10.63. That was all the money she had until Friday, when she would get paid. That was still 3 days away. She had already skipped lunch today to save money. Her stomach was growling. Maria let out a long breath. She pushed her brown hair behind her ear. Her green eyes looked tired but strong. This won't last forever, she told herself. Once she finished her business degree, things would get better. They had to. The bell above the door rang. Maria looked up with a smile, but her smile faded when she saw the man walking in. He was tall, maybe in his mid-30s. His dark hair was wet from the rain. His expensive suit was soaking wet. The fabric stuck to his wide shoulders. But it was his face that made her stop and stare. He looked broken. He looked empty, like someone who had just lost everything important in his life. He stood in the doorway. Water dripped on the floor. His blue eyes looked lost and far away. For a moment, she thought he might turn around and leave. Instead, he walked slowly to the counter. He sat down on one of the old stools. His movements looked automatic, like a robot. Maria walked over to him. Her smile was real now. She felt worried about him. "Hi there. Rough night?" The man didn't answer right away. He stared at the menu in front of him, but he wasn't really looking at it. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded rough and tired. "Coffee, plaque, and whatever you can give me for..." He reached into his pocket. He pulled out some coins. His hands were shaking. He counted the money. $2.30. Maria's heart felt heavy. She had seen people in bad situations before, but something about this man was different. His suit, even wet and wrinkled, looked expensive. The watch on his wrist looked expensive too, but his eyes showed pain and hopelessness. It was a look she knew well, the look of someone who had hit rock bottom. She had no idea what was about to happen. "Coming right up," she said softly. She turned toward the kitchen. Behind the counter, Maria made a choice that would change everything. She took out her own wallet. She looked at the $10 bill and coins inside. That was all she had, all that stood between her and having no money until Friday. But this man, whoever he was, needed help more than she needed to eat tomorrow. Her hands moved before her mind could stop her. She made coffee. Then she went to the grill and started cooking. A burger, medium rare, with cheese, fries, golden and crispy, a side of coleslaw. She put everything on a plate carefully, the way she would for any paying customer. She carried the food to the counter with the coffee. The man looked up as she set the food in front of him. He looked confused. "I only have $2.30. "This is the dinner special," Maria said. Her voice left no room for argument. "Coffee, burger, fries, and coleslaw. Manager's running a promotion tonight. Rain special." It was a lie, and they both knew it. The man's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might refuse. Then his shoulders dropped. He nodded once. He pushed his coins across the counter. Maria picked them up and dropped them in her apron pocket. Then she started wiping the counter again. She gave him privacy to eat. She didn't watch as he took the first bite, didn't see his eyes close, didn't see the small shake in his hands as he lifted the burger. But she heard the quiet sound he made. Relief, thankfulness, grief, all mixed into one breath. They sat in silence for many minutes. The only sounds were the rain outside and the quiet sound of his fork on the plate. Maria refilled his coffee without being asked. She still didn't look at him directly. Somehow, she understood that this man needed kindness without people staring at him. Finally, he spoke. "Why?" Maria stopped cleaning. She looked at him. "What?" "Why give me this?" He pointed to the almost empty plate. "You know I can't pay for it." She shrugged, a small smile on her lips. "Maybe I believe in paying it forward. Maybe I've been where you are. Maybe I just think everyone deserves a hot meal and some kindness, especially on a night like this." The man studied her for a long moment. His blue eyes searched her face, like he was trying to remember it. "What's your name?" "Maria. Maria Santos." "Maria," he repeated, like he was testing how it sounded. "I'm Jonathan. Jonathan Reed." He held out his hand. She shook it. She noticed his grip was firm despite how tired he looked. "Nice to meet you, Jonathan. Can I get you anything else? Coffee for the road?" He shook his head slowly. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a business card. It was water-stained and wrinkled. He stared at it for a moment. Something painful crossed his face. Then he put it on the counter. "I don't know if this means anything anymore. But if it does, if things change, I want you to know I won't forget this, what you did tonight." Maria picked up the card. "Jonathan Reed, CEO, Reed Industries." Her eyes went wide a little, but she said nothing. She just put the card in her apron pocket with the coins. A CEO. She had just fed a CEO with her last $10. It was almost funny. Jonathan stood up. He straightened his jacket as best he could. "Thank you, Maria. You have no idea what this meant to me, what you given me tonight." "Just a burger and some fries," she said lightly, though her heart felt full. "That's all." "No," he said. His voice was firm now. Some of the emptiness left his eyes. "It was much more than that, and I promise you I will remember." He walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the handle. He looked back at her one more time, then he stepped out into the rain and disappeared into the night. Maria stood behind the counter. Her hand touched the pocket where his card was. She wondered who Jonathan Reed really was and what had brought him to her diner on this rainy Thursday night. She had no idea that in less than 24 hours, her whole life would change forever. The next morning, Maria arrived at Parker's diner at her usual time, 6:30. She needed to help with the breakfast rush. She slept badly. Her empty stomach kept her awake. She felt the tiredness in every step, but she pushed through. She tied on her apron and got ready for another long day. At exactly 9 o'clock, the bell above the door rang. Maria looked up from pouring a customer's coffee. She froze. A man in a perfect suit walked in, then another, and another, and another. Within minutes, the small diner was filled with men and women in expensive business clothes, at least 50 of them, maybe more. They didn't sit at the tables. They didn't order food. They just stood there, waiting. Their presence changed the simple restaurant into something else entirely. The breakfast customers stared. They looked confused and a little scared. Maria's manager, Tom, came out from the kitchen. His face went pale. "What's going on? Who are all these people?" Then the crowd split open. Jonathan Reed walked through. He looked nothing like the broken man from last night. He wore a clean navy suit, his hair was perfectly styled, his blue eyes were clear and focused. He looked like the powerful CEO his business cards said he was. But when he looked at Maria behind the counter, his face softened. "Maria Santos," his voice carried across the suddenly quiet diner. "Last night, you spent your last $10 to feed a stranger. You showed me kindness when I had lost everything, when I was at my lowest point. You didn't know who I was, and you didn't care. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped." Maria's hand shook. She almost dropped the coffee pot. Her manager held her steady. His eyes were wide with shock. Last night, he walked slowly toward the counter. He smiled at her, a real smile that changed his whole face. "I made some calls last night. I reached out to every business contact I had, every investor, every ally. I told them what happened, and I told you about what you did for a stranger. This moment would change everything." One of the men stepped forward. He was carrying a leather folder. Jonathan took it. He placed it on the counter in front of Maria. "These 50 people represent some of the most powerful businesses in Seattle. They helped me get my company back, and now they want to help you." Maria's hand shook as she opened the folder. Inside were documents, letters, business cards, scholarship offers, job offers, financial grants. Her vision got blurry with tears as she read. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Full tuition to Seattle University," Jonathan said softly. "Multiple job offers from major companies, including mine. And this." He pulled out a check. He placed it on top of the other documents. Maria gasped. $50,000.
"This is from all of us," he said. He pointed to the business people around them. "A thank you for reminding us what business should really be about, taking care of people." Maria's legs felt weak. She grabbed the counter for support. Tom caught her arm. His own eyes were wet with tears. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why? It was just a burger." "It was never just a burger, Maria. It was hope when I had none. It was humanity when I thought I'd lost faith in people. You gave without expecting anything back, even when you had almost nothing to give. That kind of person is rare. That kind of person deserves to be lifted up." The diner burst into applause. The breakfast customers joined the business people. Everyone was caught up in the magic of the moment. Maria looked down at the check, at the scholarship offers, at the job opportunities spread before her, and she burst into tears. Her life, which just yesterday had been a struggle to survive, had changed in an instant. Jonathan reached across the counter. He gently took her hand. "I meant what I said last night. I wouldn't forget what you did for me. This is me keeping that promise." Maria met his eyes. She saw something there beyond thanks, something that would, in time, grow into something neither of them expected. But that was a story for another day. For now, in this moment, surrounded by people who wanted to help her the way she had helped a stranger, Maria finally understood that sometimes kindness really does come back to you, multiplied beyond anything you could imagine. And before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave your city in the comments below. And if you're enjoying the story, please like and subscribe for more. Now let's see what happens next. 2 weeks later, Maria walked through the shiny lobby of Reed Industries. Her heels clicked against the marble floor. She still couldn't quite believe this was real. After accepting Jonathan's offer to work as his executive assistant while she attended Seattle University on the full scholarship the business people had provided, her life had become something out of a dream, or maybe a fairy tale. She wasn't sure which. The elevator doors opened on the top floor. She stepped into the executive suite. She greeted Jonathan's receptionist, Margaret, a kind woman in her 60s, who had taken Maria under her wing from day one. She was teaching her everything about corporate life with patience and humor. "Morning, dear," Margaret said. "He's already in his office. Conference call with Tokyo started at 7. Maria nodded. She made her way to Jonathan's office. She was carrying the files he would need for his 10 o'clock meeting. She knocked softly. She entered when he called out. Jonathan sat behind his big desk, phone to his ear.
but his eyes lit up when he saw her. He motioned for her to come in. He mouthed the word, "Wait," before returning his attention to the call. Maria stood by the window. She looked over the Seattle skyline. She marveled at how much it changed. She had moved out of her cramped studio. She now lived in a modest but comfortable apartment closer to campus. She had bought new clothes for work. She had enrolled in classes that would actually count toward her degree, classes taught by professors she had only read about. And through it all, Jonathan had been there, checking in on her, making sure she had everything she needed, treating her not like an employee, but someone who mattered. It was confusing and wonderful and scary all at once, because somewhere in the past 2 weeks, Maria had started to develop feelings for her boss, feelings that went far beyond being grateful. She told herself it was just natural. He was handsome, successful, kind. He literally changed her life. Of course, she felt something for him. It didn't mean anything. It couldn't mean anything. He was Jonathan Reed, CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. She was still just Maria Santos, a waitress trying to get a college degree. The fact that she now worked for him didn't change the big gap between our worlds. Jonathan ended his call. He stood up. He stretched his tall frame. "Sorry about that. Time zones are a nightmare." He smiled at her, that warm smile that made her heart skip. "How are you? How was your first week of classes?" "Overwhelming," I admitted with a laugh, "but good. Really good. My business ethics professor actually talked about one of your articles yesterday." Jonathan's eyebrows went up. "Did she?" "She. And yes, the one about corporate responsibility and community investment. She called it a revolutionary approach to stakeholder capitalism." "I'm flattered." He walked around his desk. He leaned against it, his arms crossed. He studied her with those deep blue eyes. "And how are you, really? Not overwhelmed? Not regretting your decision to work here while going to school?" "Not at all," Maria said honestly. "I keep waiting to wake up, but so far, reality is holding." "Good." His face got more serious. "Maria, I need to talk to you about something." Her stomach dropped. Was he firing me? Had I done something wrong? "There's a charity gala this Saturday night. Big event. All the major players in Seattle business will be there. I need to attend, and I'd like you to come with me." Maria blinked. "As my assistant? As my date?" The words hung in the air between them. Maria's heart pounded in her chest. A date with Jonathan. "I know this is complicated. I'm your boss, and I don't want you to feel pressured. If you're uncomfortable, just say so. We'll forget I asked. But Maria, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night at the diner, not just because of what you did, but because of who you are. You're kind, intelligent, genuine. You see people, really see them, in a way most people in my world don't, and I like to get to know you better, outside of this office." Little did she know what saying yes would set in motion. Maria's mind raced. Everything in her screamed that this was a bad idea. Dating her boss, the man who had given her everything, the CEO who existed in a completely different world. But her heart, that tricky thing, was already saying yes. "I'd love to," she heard herself say. Jonathan's face broke into a real grin, the kind that made him look younger, less burdened by the weight of his job. "Yeah?" "Yeah," she confirmed. She smiled back, despite her nerves. "But I have to warn you, I've never been to a gala before. I'll probably embarrass you." "Impossible," he said firmly. "But if you're worried, we can go shopping this week. My treat. Consider it a business expense." "Jonathan, you've already given me so much." "Maria." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the warmth coming from him. "Let me do this, please. You gave to me when you had nothing. Let me give to you now that I have everything." How could she argue with that? She nodded. He smiled again. He touched her shoulder gently before returning to his desk. "Now about the Henderson contract. Did you have a chance to review it?" They fell back into work mode, but something had shifted between them, something electric and new and absolutely terrifying. As Maria left his office an hour later, she couldn't help but feel that she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump into unknown waters. She just hoped she wouldn't drown. The shopping trip happened on Thursday evening. Jonathan picked Maria up from her apartment in a sleek black car. It was driven by his personal driver, Marcus. Maria felt silly climbing into the luxury vehicle in her jeans and sweater, but Jonathan greeted her warmly. He looked relaxed in casual clothes himself. "Where are we going?" asked Marcus as he pulled into traffic. "A boutique on Fifth Avenue. The owner is a friend. She's staying open late for us." Of course she was. That's what people did for Jonathan Reed. The boutique was elegant and intimate. Soft lighting, champagne offered the moment who walked in. A woman in her 50s, stylish and gracious, greeted Jonathan with a kiss on both cheeks. Then she turned her attention to Maria. "So, this is Maria," she said. Her eyes were warm. "Jonathan has told me all about you. I'm Sophia." "Nice to meet you," Maria managed. She felt completely out of place. "Let's find you something spectacular," Sophia said. She linked her arm through Maria's. She led her deeper into the store. For the next 2 hours, Maria tried on dress after dress, each more beautiful than the last. Jonathan sat in a comfortable chair. He sipped wine. He offered opinions when asked. His look was appreciative but respectful. He never made her feel uncomfortable. Finally, she stepped out in a midnight blue gown. It hugged her curves, then it flowed smoothly to the floor. The neckline was modest but flattering, and the color brought out her green eyes. Sophia had pulled her hair up in a simple twist to show the full effect. Jonathan stood slowly. His eyes went wide. "That's the one." His voice was slightly rough.
Maria looked at herself in the 3 mirrors. She barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked elegant, sophisticated, like she belonged in Jonathan's world. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "You're beautiful," Jonathan corrected. The honesty in his voice made her blush. They left the boutique with the dress carefully packaged, along with shoes, a clutch, and accessories that Sophia said were essential. Maria tried not to think about how much it all cost. "Thank you," she said in the car. "This is too much, but thank you." Jonathan took her hand. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. "Stop thanking me. I want to do this. I want to see you in that dress on Saturday night, walking into that gala on my arm, showing everyone the remarkable woman I've been lucky enough to know." Maria's breath caught. The way he looked at her, the warmth in his eyes, the gentle pressure of his hand on hers. This wasn't just being grateful or feeling obliged. This was something real. "Jonathan," she started. She wasn't sure what she wanted to say. "I know this is moving fast," he said quietly, "and I know the circumstances are unusual, but I meant what I said. I want to get to know you, Maria, the real you, not the waitress, not my assistant, just you." "Why?" asked Maria, the question that had been burning in her since he'd asked her to the gala. "Because when I was at my lowest, when I had lost everything, you saw me, not the CEO, not the wealthy businessman, just a man who needed help. And you helped without hesitation, without expecting anything in return. Do you know how rare that is? How valuable?" He shifted in his seat to face her more fully. "I've dated women who wanted my money, my status, my connections. But you gave to me when I had none of those things, when I was just a broken man in a diner. That's who you are, and that's who I want to know better." Maria felt tears in her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if I can't fit into your world? What if I mess this up?" "Then we'll figure it out together," Jonathan said simply. "But Maria, you've already proven you can handle anything. You worked your way through school. You kept your kindness and compassion despite struggling with money.
and you've excelled in every task I've given you at work. You belong anywhere you choose to be." The car pulled up to her apartment building. Marcus raised the privacy screen. Jonathan leaned closer. His eyes searched hers. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly. Maria's heart nearly exploded. She nodded. She couldn't speak. He cupped her face gently. His thumb brushed her cheek, and then his lips met hers in a kiss that was tender and sweet and absolutely perfect. When they pulled apart, Maria felt dizzy. Her whole body was humming with electricity. "Saturday," Jonathan murmured against her lips. "Saturday," she agreed. She kissed him once more. Then she floated out of the car and up to her apartment, the dress box in her arms and hope blooming in her chest. Saturday arrived with all the nervous energy of a first date, but bigger. This wasn't just any date. This was a public appearance with one of Seattle's most eligible bachelors at an event where everyone who mattered in the business world would be watching, judging, talking. Maria spent the afternoon getting ready. Her hands shook as she did her makeup and hair. She had watched tutorial videos, practiced, and now could only hope she looked sophisticated enough to stand beside Jonathan, to not embarrass him. When she finally put on the midnight blue gown, she took a long look in the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger, elegant, poised, beautiful. Maria Santos, former waitress, going to a gala with a CEO. Life was strange. The buzzer sounded at exactly 6 o'clock. Maria grabbed her clutch. She took a deep breath, and she headed downstairs. Jonathan stood beside the car, and when he saw her, his face made all her nervousness worth it. He looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. "You're stunning," he said. He took her hand. He kissed it gently. "Absolutely stunning." "You look pretty good yourself," Maria managed. She took in his perfectly fitted tuxedo. He helped her into the car. They drove to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel where the gala was being held. The ballroom was magnificent, all crystal chandeliers and gold touches, filled with men in tuxedos and women in designer gowns. Maria felt her confidence shake as they walked in. Jonathan's hand warm on her lower back, but he stayed close, introducing her to business partners and investors, his pride in her clear in every word.
"This is Maria Santos," he would say. "She's brilliant, working on her business degree at Seattle University while serving as my executive assistant, one of the smartest people I know." People's reactions varied. Some were genuinely warm, interested in her story. Others were politely distant, clearly wondering who this unknown woman was and why she was with Jonathan Reed. And a few, especially some of the women there, looked at her with barely hidden hostility. One woman in particular caught Maria's attention. Tall, blonde, stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than Maria's entire wardrobe. She approached them with a predatory smile. "Jonathan," she purred. She kissed his cheek. She stayed close just a bit too long. "It's been too long," Jonathan said politely, but Maria noticed he moved closer to her. "This is Maria Santos. Maria, Victoria Chambers. We worked together years ago." "How nice," Victoria said. Her eyes raked over Maria with barely hidden contempt. "So, Maria, how did you and Jonathan meet?" Before Maria could respond, Jonathan spoke. "Maria helped me during a difficult time. She showed me genuine kindness when I needed it most." Victoria's smile sharpened. "How charitable of you, Jonathan, to bring her to an event like this. I'm sure it's quite overwhelming for her." The meanness in her tone made Maria's back straighten. She had dealt with rude customers at the diner for years. She could handle one entitled woman. "Actually," Maria said pleasantly, "it's fascinating. I'm learning a lot about how the business elite interact. Very educational for my studies in corporate behavior." Jonathan coughed to hide a laugh. Victoria's smile turned icy. "Well, enjoy the evening," her tone suggested the opposite. Then she walked away. "I'm sorry about that,"
Jonathan said once she was gone. "Victoria and I dated briefly years ago. It didn't end well." "She still has feelings for you," Maria observed. "That's her problem, not mine. I'm exactly where I want to be." He pulled Maria closer. They moved to the dance floor as the orchestra began to play. Dancing with Jonathan was like floating. He led confidently, and Maria, who had worried about her limited dance skills, found herself moving easily in his arms. They talked quietly, his hand warm on her waist, her head close to his shoulder. "Everyone's watching us," Maria murmured. "Let them watch. I'm proud to be here with you, Maria. I don't care what anyone thinks." But someone did care what people thought. As the evening went on, Maria noticed Victoria watching them, her face getting darker. During dinner, when Jonathan stepped away to take an important call, Victoria appeared at Maria's side. "Can I offer you some advice?" Victoria said. Her voice was low and mean. "Whatever you think is happening between you and Jonathan, it won't last. You're a novelty to him, a charity case. He feels guilty that you helped him, so he's playing the generous benefactor. But eventually he'll remember that you don't belong in his world, and he'll move on to someone more suitable." The words hit harder than Maria wanted to admit. They poked at every insecurity she had buried. "Jonathan isn't like that," Maria said, but her voice wavered. "Isn't he? Look around, sweetheart. Everyone here is wondering the same thing. What is Jonathan Reed doing with a waitress? How long until he gets bored? How long until he realizes he could have anyone, and he's wasting his time with someone so beneath him?" Maria's hands clenched in her lap. "You don't know anything about us. I know Jonathan. I know this world, and I know you don't fit in it. You're playing dress-up, but underneath that expensive gown, you're just a girl who serves coffee, and sooner or later, Jonathan will see that too." Victoria walked away, leaving Maria fighting back tears. She hated that the woman's words had affected her, hated that they echoed the doubts she already had. When Jonathan returned, he immediately noticed something was wrong.
"What happened?" Maria forced a smile. "Nothing, just tired." He studied her face, his eyes concerned. But before he could ask more questions, another businessman came over. He pulled Jonathan into a conversation about a pending merger. Maria excused herself. She headed to the restroom. She needed space to pull herself together. In the elegant bathroom, she stared at her reflection, Victoria's words echoing in her mind. Was she just a charity case to Jonathan? Was this all just guilt and obligation dressed up as romance? The door opened. An older woman walked in, elegant and regal in a silver gown. She smiled warmly at Maria. "You're here with Jonathan Reed, aren't you? I saw you dancing earlier." Maria nodded, not sure what to expect. "I'm Eleanor Morrison. No relation, I assume," the woman said with a gentle laugh. "I've known Jonathan for years. His father and my husband were business partners." "It's nice to meet you," Maria said politely. Eleanor studied her for a moment. "I saw Victoria Chambers talking to you. Let me guess. She told you that you don't belong here, that Jonathan will eventually realize you're not good enough for him?" Maria's eyes widened. How did she know? "Victoria says that to every woman Jonathan shows interest in. She's been trying to get him back for 5 years, ever since he had the good sense to end their relationship. Don't let her poison get into your head." "But what if she's right?" Maria whispered. "What if I don't belong in his world?" "My dear," Eleanor said gently, "I've watched Jonathan navigate the business world for over a decade. I've seen him with women who absolutely belonged in this world, by every measure that matters to people like Victoria. Beautiful, wealthy, connected women, and I've never seen him look at any of them the way he looks at you." "Really?" "Really. That young man is completely smitten, and from what I've observed tonight, you feel the same way about him. Don't let people like Victoria convince you that where you come from matters more than who you are. If Jonathan sees something special in you, it's because it's there."
Maria felt tears in her eyes again, but this time from gratitude. "Thank you." "You're welcome. Now go back out there and enjoy your evening with that handsome young man. And if Victoria bothers you again, just remember that she's operating from jealousy, and jealousy makes people very small." Maria returned to the ballroom with her head held high. Jonathan was waiting by their table, and his face lit up when he saw her. "There you are. I was about to send out a search party." "I'm fine," Maria said, and this time she meant it. "Dance with me again." He held out his hand. She took it. She let him lead her back to the dance floor. As they swayed to the music, Jonathan leaned down. He whispered in her ear, "I don't know what Victoria said to you, but I can guess. Please don't let her get to you. She doesn't know us, doesn't know what we have." "What do we have?" Maria asked. She looked up at him. Jonathan's eyes were serious, intense. "Something real. Something that scares me because I've never felt this way before. You make me want to be better, Maria. Not richer or more successful, just better, kinder, more human, the way you were that night at the diner." "I'm scared too," Maria admitted. "Scared that I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. Scared that I'm not enough." "You're more than enough," Jonathan firmed. "You're everything." He kissed her then, right there on the dance floor, in front of everyone who mattered in Seattle business. A public statement that Maria Santos mattered to him, that he was his choice, no matter what anyone else thought. When they finally pulled apart, the room had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. Maria felt her face get hot, but Jonathan just smiled and kept dancing. He didn't care about the attention. But what happened next shocked everyone. Victoria appeared again, her face twisted with anger and something else, desperation. "You're making a mistake, Jonathan," she loudly said. Her voice carried across the now quiet ballroom. "She's using you. Can't you see that? She gave you a burger and now you think you owe her your life? It's pathetic." "Victoria, that's enough," Jonathan said. His voice was cold. "No, it's not enough. Someone needs to wake you up before you ruin your reputation with this girl who doesn't belong here." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Maria belongs anywhere she chooses to be, and I'd appreciate it if you'd leave her alone." "Or what? You'll choose her over the business relationships you've spent years building, over people who actually matter?" "Yes," Jonathan said simply. "I will. Every time. Without hesitation." The room filled with whispers. Victoria's face went white, then red. "You'll regret this," she hissed. Then she turned and stormed out of the ballroom. Jonathan turned to Maria. He cupped her face. "Are you okay?" "I don't want to cause problems for you," Maria whispered. "You're not. Victoria was never important to me, and her opinion matters even less. What matters is you. Us. Are we okay?" Maria thought about Eleanor's words, about the way Jonathan looked at her, about how he had just publicly defended her without hesitation. All her doubts seemed smaller suddenly. "We're okay. Better than okay." They left the gala shortly after, both ready to escape the scrutiny and drama. In the car, Jonathan held her close. "I'm sorry the evening turned out like that." "Don't be. It was enlightening," Maria smiled. "And Eleanor Morrison is lovely." "She is. She also happens to be one of the most respected businesswomen in Seattle. If she approves of you, and I'm guessing she does, half the people in that room will reconsider their initial judgments." "I don't care what they think," Maria said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "I only care what you think." "I think," Jonathan said slowly, "that I'm falling in love with you, Maria Santos, and it terrifies me and thrills me in equal measure." Maria's breath caught. Love. He was falling in love with her. "I think I'm falling in love with you, too," she whispered. Jonathan kissed her again, deep and passionate, and Maria felt herself falling, not into unknown waters, but into something wonderful and real and absolutely worth the risk. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Maria settled into a routine of classes, work, and stolen moments with Jonathan. They kept their relationship quiet at the office, professional during work hours, but after 5 o'clock, they were just Maria and Jonathan, two people falling deeper in love with each passing day.
Jonathan took her to quiet restaurants where they could talk for hours. They walked along Puget Sound, bundled against the autumn chill, talking about everything and nothing. He listened with genuine interest as she told him about her childhood, her struggles, her dreams. And slowly he opened up to her too, revealing the man beneath the CEO mask. She learned that he had built his company from almost nothing, working 80-hour weeks for years to prove himself, that his parents had died in a car accident when he was 23, leaving him alone with a struggling business and crushing grief, that he sometimes woke up at 3 in the morning, terrified that he would lose everything he had built. "That night you found me at the diner," he told her one evening as they sat in his apartment overlooking the city. "I had just lost the company my father started, the company I had poured my entire adult life into building. It felt like losing him all over again." Maria took his hand, holding it tightly. "But you got it back." "With help. Something I've always been terrible at accepting. I was raised to be independent, self-sufficient. Asking those 50 business people for help was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But you did it. Because of you. Because you showed me that accepting help isn't weakness, it's human." He kissed her softly. "You changed me, Maria. Made me better." "You changed me too," she said. "Gave me a future I never thought possible." They were happy. Genuinely, beautifully happy. Which is why Maria should have known something would go wrong. It started on a Tuesday morning. Maria arrived at work to find Jonathan's office dark, Margaret absent from her desk. Confused, she checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Jonathan, all before 6 a.m. Her heart pounding, she called him back. "Maria," he answered on the first ring, his voice strained. "I'm so sorry. I should have called you sooner. I'm at Harborview Medical Center." Maria's blood ran cold. "What happened? Are you okay?" "It's my father's business partner, Robert Morrison, Eleanor's husband. He had a massive heart attack early this morning. Eleanor called me and I came straight here. He's in surgery now." Maria sank into a chair, her mind reeling. Eleanor, the kind woman from the gala, her husband might be dying. "I'm coming," she said. "You don't have to." "I'm coming, Jonathan. Which room?" He gave her the information. Maria grabbed her purse and headed for the elevator. 40 minutes later, she found Jonathan in a private waiting room with Eleanor and several other people she didn't recognize. Eleanor looked exhausted, her elegant composure cracked, revealing the terrified wife beneath. "Maria," Jonathan said, standing when he saw her. He pulled her into a hug, and she felt the tension in his body. "How is he?" she asked quietly. "Still in surgery. They're doing a triple bypass. It's bad." Eleanor looked up from her chair, her eyes red from crying. "Maria, dear, you came." "Of course," Maria said, moving to sit beside the older woman, taking her hand. "I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do?" Eleanor squeezed her hand gratefully. "You're already doing it, just by being here." They waited. Hours passed, the tension in the room growing with each minute. Jonathan paced, made calls, coordinated with hospital staff. Maria stayed with Eleanor, holding her hand, bringing her coffee and tissues, listening as she talked about her 50-year marriage to Robert. Finally, a surgeon appeared, still in his scrubs. Everyone stood. The surgery was successful, and Eleanor nearly collapsed with relief. "He's stable, but the next 24 hours are critical. He's in the ICU now." "Mrs. Morrison, you can see him briefly." Eleanor stood on shaking legs. Maria helped steady her. "Thank you,"
Maria whispered to her, "for being here, for caring." After Eleanor left with the surgeon, Jonathan pulled Maria into his arms. "Thank you for coming," he murmured into her hair. "Of course. Eleanor's been kind to me, and Robert means something to you. He's the closest thing I have to a father. After my parents died, he stepped in, mentored me, believed in me when no one else did. If I lost him—" His voice broke, and Maria held him tighter. "He's going to be okay. The surgery was successful. He's going to be okay." They stayed at the hospital for the rest of the day. Maria called her professors to explain her absence, rescheduled Jonathan's meetings. When evening came, Jonathan convinced Eleanor to go home and rest, promising to stay at the hospital overnight in case anything changed.
"You should go home too," he told Maria. "Get some sleep." "I'm staying with you," she said firmly. "Maria, Jonathan, I'm staying. You don't have to go through this alone." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded, pulling her close. They spent the night in uncomfortable waiting room chairs, taking turns dozing while the other kept watch. In the early morning hours, when the hospital was quiet and dimmed, Jonathan spoke softly. "When my parents died, I was alone, completely alone. No siblings, no close family, just me and a business that was failing. Robert saved me. He taught me everything I know about running a company, about being a leader. But more than that, he taught me that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with." He turned to look at Maria, his eyes intense in the low light. "I don't want to be alone anymore, Maria. I don't want to build an empire if you are not there to share it with me. These past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life." Maria's heart swelled. "Mine too. I know this is fast. I know we've only been together a short time, but I've never been more certain of anything." He took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "I love you, Maria Santos. Not because you helped me that night, not because you're kind or intelligent or beautiful, though you're all those things. I love you because when I'm with you, I'm the person I want to be, the person my parents would have been proud of, the person Robert believed I could become." Tears streamed down Maria's face. "I love you too, so much. It scares me." "Don't be scared. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." They kissed, gentle and sweet, a promise exchanged in the quiet hours of the night. Robert recovered slowly over the following weeks. The heart attack had been severe, and at 78, his body needed time to heal. Jonathan spent hours at the hospital, and Maria was often with him, talking to Robert and Eleanor, bringing them meals, keeping them company. She grew close to both of them, especially Eleanor, who treated her like the daughter she'd never had. But as Robert improved, a new problem emerged. The stress of his recovery had triggered questions about succession at Morrison & Associates, the investment firm Robert had built over 5 decades. He had no children, no clear heir, and the board was getting restless. "They want me to take over," Jonathan told Maria one evening. They were in his apartment, Maria curled against him on the couch. "Robert asked me this morning, said he trusts me to preserve his legacy." "That's wonderful," Maria said. "You'd be perfect." It would mean merging Reed Industries with Morrison & Associates, creating one of the largest investment firms in the Northwest. It's an incredible opportunity. "But," she prompted, sensing his hesitation, "but it would also mean more work, more responsibility, more time away from everything else, from you." Maria sat up to look at him. "Jonathan, you can't turn down an opportunity like this because of me." "Why not? What's the point of building an empire if I lose what really matters in the process?" "You won't lose me. I'm not going anywhere." He cupped her face gently. "Promise me. Promise that no matter how crazy things get, no matter how many hours I have to work or events I have to attend, you'll stay with me." "I promise," she said,
and sealed it with a kiss. Jonathan accepted Robert's offer. The news broke in the Seattle business world like a bomb. Reed Industries and Morrison and Associates were merging, with Jonathan Reed at the head of the combined company. It was a brilliant move, everyone agreed. It would make Jonathan one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. But it also made him a target. The board members who had wanted Morrison and Associates for themselves were not happy about being passed over for an outsider, even one Robert trusted. Competitors saw the merger as a threat, and the media, always hungry for a story, began digging into every aspect of Jonathan's life, including his relationship with Maria. The first article appeared in a Seattle business magazine, CEO's Cinderella Story, Jonathan Reed's Waitress Romance. It was accompanied by photos of them at the gala, carefully chosen to make Maria look overwhelmed and out of place. The article itself was a mix of facts and speculation, questioning whether Maria was with Jonathan for his money, whether the relationship was appropriate given that she was his employee, whether Jonathan was making sound business decisions or letting emotion cloud his judgment. Maria read it in her apartment one evening. She felt sick. Jonathan called an hour later, furious. "I'm having my lawyers issue a cease and desist. This is defamation." "It's not defamation if it's based on questions people actually have," Maria said quietly. "What are you talking about?" "Jonathan, I am your employee. I was a waitress when we met. These are legitimate concerns." "No, they're not. Our relationship is no one's business but ours." "But it is. Don't you see? You're about to become one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. Everything you do is going to be scrutinized. Everything. Including me." There was silence on the line. Then Jonathan spoke, his voice firm. "Then let them scrutinize. Let them write their articles and ask their questions. I don't care, Maria. I'm not giving you up because some tabloid wants a story." "But what if it affects the merger? What if the board uses our relationship as a reason to question your judgment?" "Then I'll prove them wrong. Maria, I've faced hostile takeovers, financial crisis, the death of my parents. I've survived all of it. I can survive some negative press." But it wasn't just negative press. Over the next week, more articles appeared. Blog posts speculating about their relationship, social media comments ranging from supportive to viciously cruel. Maria's photo was everywhere, her background dissected, her motives questioned. She couldn't go to class without people staring, whispering, couldn't work without knowing her coworkers were reading the latest gossip. The pressure was crushing. And then Victoria Chambers appeared on a business news show and made everything worse. I've known Jonathan Reed for years, and while I wish him nothing but happiness, I do worry that he's being taken advantage of. This young woman came into his life at a vulnerable moment, and now she's positioned herself perfectly to benefit from his success. I just hope he's being careful. The clip went viral. Maria watched it in her apartment, her hands shaking. Victoria had just implied on national television that Maria was a gold digger, that she manipulated Jonathan, that their entire relationship was a calculated scheme. Jonathan called within minutes of the segment airing. "I'm handling this. My PR team is drafting a response, and I'm going to personally—" "Maybe Victoria is right," Maria interrupted. Jonathan fell silent. "What?" "Maybe I am taking advantage of you. You've given me so much, Jonathan. A job, an education, opportunities I never would have had. Maybe everyone's right to question whether this is real or if I'm just—" "Stop," Jonathan said, his voice sharp. "Stop right now. Look at me." "You're not here," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Then turn on your laptop. Video call now." With shaking hands, Maria opened her computer. She accepted his call. Jonathan's face appeared, and even through the screen she could see the intensity in his eyes. "Listen to me," he said. "I don't care what Victoria says. I don't care what anyone says. I know the truth. You are not using me. You love me. I know you do. And I love you. That's all that matters. But the articles, the scrutiny, it's affecting you, affecting the merger. I don't care about any of that if it means losing you. You should care. This is your dream, Jonathan. The merger with Morrison and Associates, becoming the CEO your father would have been proud of. I can't be the reason you lose that. You're not. You're the reason I wanted it. Don't you understand? Before you, I was building an empire for myself, for my legacy. Now I'm building it for us, for our future. Maria wiped her tears. What if there is no future? What if the pressure gets worse and we can't survive it?
Then we fight for it, together. But Maria, I need to know you're in this with me. Are you? Maria looked at Jonathan's face on the screen, saw the love and desperation in his eyes, and felt her resolve crumble. She couldn't walk away from him, couldn't give up on what they had because of what other people thought. "I'm in," she whispered. "I'm scared, but I'm in." Jonathan's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't move." He ended the call, and true to his word, arrived at her apartment exactly 20 minutes later. When she opened the door, he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," he murmured against her hair. "I'm sorry the media's doing this to you. I'm sorry Victoria's such a vindictive person. I'm sorry my life comes with all this scrutiny." "It's not your fault," Maria said, breathing in his familiar scent, feeling safe for the first time in days. "Yes, it is, but I'm going to fix it." He pulled back to look at her, his hands cupping her face. "Tomorrow, I'm holding a press conference. I'm going to tell everyone exactly who you are to me, and anyone who has a problem with it can go to hell." "Jonathan, you can't." "Yes, I can, and I will. No more hiding, no more letting people speculate. I'm claiming you publicly, Maria, as my partner, my equal, the woman I love." Maria's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. "Okay, okay, okay. If you're ready to face this head on, then so am I." They spent the night together, not making love, just holding each other, finding strength in their connection. And the next afternoon, Jonathan held the press conference that would change everything. The room was packed with reporters, cameras, business journalists. Jonathan stood at a podium, looking every inch the powerful CEO. But when he spoke, his voice was warm, human. "I've called this press conference to address my recent speculation about my personal life, specifically my relationship with Maria Santos." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. "Maria Santos is the most remarkable woman I have ever known. When I was at my lowest, when I had lost everything that mattered to me, she showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. She gave to me when she herself had almost nothing. That act of compassion changed my life." A reporter shouted a question, but Jonathan held his hand. "I'm not finished. To the months I've had the privilege of getting to know Maria, not the waitress, not my employee, but the woman. She's intelligent, driven, compassionate, genuine. She challenges me to be better. She reminds me that business isn't just about profits and mergers, it's about people. And yes, I love her, completely and without reservation." The room erupted in questions, but Jonathan's voice carried over them. "To those who question her motives, I say this: you don't know her. You don't know what she sacrificed to help a stranger. You don't know how hard she's worked to build a better life for herself. And you certainly don't know what we have together. So I'm asking you respectfully to stop speculating about our relationship and focus on what actually matters: the merger,
the jobs we'll create, the investments we'll make in this community." He looked directly at the camera again. "And to Victoria Chambers, who has made it her personal mission to undermine Maria, stop. Your jealousy is unbecoming, and your attempts to damage Maria's reputation say more about you than they ever could about her. Move on." The press conference ended, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with reactions. Some people criticized Jonathan for mixing his personal and professional life, but many more praised him for standing up for the woman he loved, for being honest and vulnerable. Eleanor Morrison released a statement supporting both Jonathan and Maria, calling their relationship a beautiful example of how kindness and compassion can transform lives. Other business leaders chimed in, some condemning the media's intrusion into Jonathan's private life. Within 48 hours, the narrative had shifted. Instead of CEO's questionable romance, headlines read, "Love story that inspired a business empire," and Jonathan Reed's refreshing honesty.
Maria watched it all from her apartment, overwhelmed and grateful. Jonathan had fought for her publicly and without reservation. He had risked his reputation, his business relationships, everything to defend her. That evening, he came to her apartment with takeout and champagne. "We're celebrating," he announced. Celebrating what? Surviving, thriving, proving everyone wrong. They ate Chinese food on her couch, laughing and talking, the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. "I can't believe you did that," called out Victoria on national television. "She deserved it, and more importantly, you deserve to be defended. I'm done letting people question us, Maria. I'm done hiding what you mean to me." "What do you mean to me?" she asked softly. Jonathan set down his food. He took her hands. "You mean everything. You're my present and my future. You're the reason I wake up excited for the day. You're the person I want to share every success and every failure with. You're my home, Maria." She kissed him then, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Jonathan reached into his jacket pocket. "I was going to wait, plan something elaborate and romantic, but after everything we've been through, I don't want to wait anymore." He pulled out a small velvet box. Maria's heart stopped. "Maria Santos," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "I know this is fast. I know we've only been together a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to navigate board meetings and business crises with you by my side. I want everything with you. Will you marry me?" Maria couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the overwhelming love and joy flooding through her. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, oh my God, yes." Jonathan slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly, sparkling in the light of her small apartment. Then he was kissing her again, and they were laughing and crying at the same time, caught up in the perfect moment. They made love that night, slow and tender and filled with promises. And afterward, as they lay tangled together, Jonathan's hand covering hers, their fingers intertwined, the engagement ring catching the moonlight, Maria felt a peace she had never known. But the next morning brought a crisis neither of them expected. Maria woke to her phone buzzing constantly. Confused, she checked it. Dozens of messages and missed calls. With growing dread, she opened her social media. The top trending topic was Jonathan Reed engaged, but the articles weren't celebratory. They were vicious. Someone had leaked information about Maria's past, about her father who had abandoned her family when she was 10, about her mother who had struggled with addiction and died when Maria was 18, about the years Maria had spent in foster care, working multiple jobs just to survive. Every painful private detail of her life was now public, dissected by strangers, used as ammunition to question her worth, her character, her intentions.
Gold digger raised in foster care latches on to CEO, read one headline. Tragic past or calculated scheme, Maria Santos's road to riches, read another. Maria felt like she was drowning. All her shame, all the pain she had worked so hard to overcome was now entertainment for millions of people. Jonathan woke beside her. He immediately knew something was wrong. What happened? She couldn't speak, just handed him her phone. She watched his face darken as he read, saw the fury building in his eyes. "Who did this?" he said, his voice deadly calm. "How did they get this information?" "I don't know, but Jonathan, maybe this is a sign. Maybe we're not supposed to do this. Maybe—" "No," he said firmly. "No, this doesn't change anything. So what if people know about your past? Maria, you survived foster care. You put yourself through school while working full-time. You helped a stranger with your last dollar. You're amazing. None of this makes you less. It makes you more. But your reputation, the merger—" "I don't care. Maria, look at me."
She met his eyes, seeing nothing but love and certainty. "I don't care what people know about your past. I don't care what they write or what they say. I love you, all of you. Where you came from, what you survived, what you became. That's who you are, and I'm proud to marry you." "Are you sure?" she asked, needing to hear it. "I've never been more sure of anything." They spent the morning with Jonathan's legal team and PR specialists. It didn't take long to discover the source. Victoria Chambers had hired a private investigator to dig into Maria's background. The investigator had accessed sealed foster care records illegally and sold the information to tabloids. "We have grounds for a lawsuit, multiple lawsuits actually, invasion of privacy, illegal access to sealed records, potentially defamation, depending on how some of these articles frame the information." "Do it," Jonathan said. "All of it. I want Victoria Chambers to understand that actions have consequences." But Maria felt numb. Yes, they could sue Victoria. Yes, they could fight back legally. But the damage was done. Her private pain was now public knowledge. People she'd never met were judging her, making assumptions about her character based on circumstances she had no control over. "I need some air," she said, standing abruptly. "Maria, I just need a minute, please." She went out onto the balcony of Jonathan's apartment, looking out over Seattle, trying to steady her breathing. A few minutes later, Jonathan joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Talk to me," he said gently. "I'm not ashamed of my past," Maria said quietly. "I survived. I worked hard. I made something of myself, but I didn't want it to define me. I didn't want people to look at me and see foster kid or daughter of an addict. I wanted to be just Maria, and now I'll never be just Maria again. I'll always be Jonathan Reed's fiancé with the tragic past." "Are you?" Jonathan said, and she looked at him in surprise. "You'll never be just Maria again, because you're Maria, my fiancé. Maria, brilliant business student. Maria, the woman who changed my life. Maria, who's going to change countless other lives through the foundation we're going to start together." "What foundation?" "The one I've been thinking about since the press conference. A foundation to help young people in foster care get access to education and job training, to give them the opportunities you had to fight so hard for, to make sure other kids like you don't have to struggle alone." Maria felt tears streaming down her face. "You want to start a foundation because of me?" "With you. I want us to do it together. Take this terrible situation and turn it into something good. Show everyone that your past isn't something to be ashamed of, it's something to be honored. You survived, Maria, and now you're going to help others survive too." She turned to face him fully, seeing the sincerity in his eyes.
You really mean that? Every word. So what do you say? Will you help me build something that matters? Maria thought about all the nights she'd spent as a teenager, working late shifts, and wondering if life would ever get better, about the foster parents who had helped her and the ones who hadn't, about the kids still in the system, still fighting, still hoping for a chance. Yes, she said, let's do it. They kissed on the balcony, the Seattle wind whipping around them, and Maria felt something shift inside her. The shame she'd been carrying for years, the fear that her past would always hold her back, began to dissolve. Because Jonathan didn't just accept her past, he wanted to honor it, to turn it into something powerful and good. That afternoon, they held another press conference, this one with Maria by Jonathan's side. I'm not going to address every article or every speculation, but I do want to address the illegal leak of Maria's private foster care records. We are pursuing legal action against everyone involved in obtaining and publishing that information. Sealed records exist for a reason, and violating them is not journalism, it's a crime. Then he looked at Maria, and she took a breath, stepping up to the microphone. It was the first time she'd spoken publicly since the media frenzy began. My name is Maria Santos, and yes, I grew up in foster care. My mother struggled with addiction and passed away when I was 18. My childhood was hard, but it also made me who I am. It taught me resilience, compassion, and the value of kindness. She looked directly at the cameras. I'm not ashamed of where I come from, and I refuse to let anyone use my past to diminish my present or my future. Jonathan and I are starting a foundation to help youth in foster care access education and opportunity, because every kid deserves a chance, regardless of where they start.
The room was silent when she finished. Then, slowly, applause began, not from the reporters, but from the back of the room where Eleanor and Robert Morrison stood, having come to show their support. Other business leaders joined in, and soon the entire room was applauding. Maria felt Jonathan's hand squeeze hers, and she squeezed back, drawing strength from him. That evening, the narrative shifted again. Maria Santos's powerful response, and from tragedy to triumph, the real Cinderella story dominated headlines. Support poured in from advocacy groups, foster care organizations, and people who had been in similar situations. Victoria Chambers released a statement denying involvement in the leak, but the evidence was damning, and her reputation in the Seattle business community was destroyed. Several of her clients left her firm, and the lawsuit Jonathan filed ensured she would face serious legal consequences. But more importantly, Maria and Jonathan moved forward together, united and stronger than ever. 6 months later, Maria stood in the lobby of the newly opened Morrison Reed Youth Foundation, her hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. At 3 months pregnant, she was just starting to show, a secret she and Jonathan had shared with only Eleanor and Robert so far. The foundation had become her passion project. Working alongside Jonathan and a dedicated team, they had created a comprehensive program offering scholarships, job training, mentorship, and housing assistance to young people aging out of foster care. In just 6 months, they had helped over 200 kids. 200 lives changed, 200 futures made brighter. "Mrs. Reed, they're ready for you," Margaret said, appearing at her side. Mrs. Reed. Maria still wasn't used to the name, even 3 months after her small, intimate wedding to Jonathan. They had married in Eleanor and Robert's garden, with only a handful of close friends present. No media, no spectacle, just 2 people making promises to each other, surrounded by love. Maria walked to the auditorium where the foundation's first graduating class waited. 20 young people who had completed the job training program and secured employment with companies across Seattle.
Many of those companies were owned or led by the same 50 business people who had helped Jonathan get his company back, who had changed Maria's life that morning at the diner. Jonathan was already on the stage, talking to the graduates, his face animated and warm. When she saw Maria, his entire expression softened, and she saw the love there, the pride, the joy. She joined him on the stage. He took her hand, squeezing gently. "I want to introduce you to someone very special," Jonathan told the graduates. "This is my wife, Maria. She's the reason this foundation exists. She's the reason I understand what you've been through and why programs like this matter." Maria stepped forward, looking at the young faces before her. She saw herself in them, the hope, the determination, the fear that maybe they weren't good enough, that maybe they'd never escape where they came from. "When I was 18, I aged out of foster care with $300 and a high school diploma. I worked 3 jobs while going to community college part-time. I lived in a studio apartment that was more closet than home. I struggled every single day." She paused, seeing the recognition in their eyes. "But I also had something important. I had people who believed in me, foster parents who taught me that kindness matters, teachers who saw my potential, and eventually I met someone who showed me that where you come from doesn't determine where you're going." She looked at Jonathan, who smiled encouragingly. "This foundation is our way of being that person for you, of believing in you when the world tells you that foster kids don't succeed, that your past defines your future, that you're not worthy of great things." Her voice grew stronger. "You are worthy. You are capable. You are enough. And we're here to prove it, not just to the world, but to yourselves." The auditorium erupted in applause, and several of the graduates were crying. After the ceremony, a young woman approached Maria. She was 19, with bright eyes and a nervous smile. "Mrs. Reed, I just wanted to say thank you. Before this program, I was living in my car. I had given up on college, on any kind of future. But your story, knowing that you went through the same things and made it, it gave me hope. And now I have a job, an apartment, and I'm enrolling at Seattle University in the fall." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "What's your name?" "Jennifer. Jennifer Martinez." "Jennifer, you did this. You showed up. You worked hard. You didn't give up. We just opened a door. You walked through it." "But you opened the door," Jennifer insisted. "That matters." After Jennifer walked away, Maria felt Jonathan's arms wrap around her from behind, his hands gently resting on her belly. "You're amazing, you know that?" he murmured in her ear. "We're amazing. This is ours, our foundation, our mission, our baby's legacy." "Speaking of which," Jonathan said, turning her to face him, "I think it's time we told people about the baby. I'm tired of hiding how happy I am." Maria laughed. "Okay, but let's tell Eleanor and Robert first, officially." They drove to the Morrisons' house that evening for dinner, a weekly tradition they had maintained since the wedding. Eleanor opened the door, her face lighting up when she saw them. "My dears, come in, come in. Robert's in the study pretending to work when he's really just reading a mystery novel." Over dinner, Jonathan and Maria exchanged glances, and finally, Jonathan cleared his throat. "Eleanor, Robert, we have news." Eleanor set down her fork, her eyes sharp. "You're pregnant." Maria's jaw dropped. "How did you know?" "My dear, I've been married for 50 years and watched countless friends and colleagues have children. I know that glow when I see it. Plus, you haven't touched the wine, and you've been ordering ginger tea instead of coffee." Robert laughed, a rich sound that filled the room. She also has a talent for knowing things before anyone tells her. It's unnerving. "We're having a baby," Maria confirmed, smiling widely. "Due in January." Eleanor stood. She pulled both of them into a hug. "Oh, this is wonderful news, just wonderful. And you know Robert and I will spoil this child absolutely rotten." "We're counting on it," Jonathan said, his arm around Maria. That night, as they lay in bed in their new house, a beautiful house they had bought together, Ashley felt Jonathan's hand on her belly, gently tracing circles. "Thank you," he quietly said. "For what?"
For everything. For feeding a stranger. For giving me a second chance at life. For loving me. For building this foundation with me. For giving me a family. You gave me all those things too, Maria said. We saved each other, Jonathan. That's what love is. The next morning, they announced the pregnancy publicly. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with congratulations pouring in from business associates, foundation supporters, and even strangers on social media who had followed their story. The months passed quickly. Maria finished her degree at Seattle University, graduating with honors while 7 months pregnant. Jonathan gave the commencement speech, and when he talked about resilience and determination, he looked directly at her. The foundation continued to grow, expanding to serve 500 young people in its first year. Maria stepped back from day-to-day operations as her due date approached, but she stayed involved, conducting video meetings from home, reviewing applications, making sure every kid who came through their program knew they mattered. On a snowy January evening, Maria went into labor. Jonathan drove her to Harborview Medical, the same hospital where they had waited through Robert's surgery, where so much of their story had unfolded. 12 hours later, they welcomed a daughter, perfect and tiny, with Jonathan's blue eyes and a full head of dark hair. "What should we name her?" Jonathan asked, cradling the baby with wonder on his face. Maria thought about everything that had brought them to this moment: the rainy night at the diner, the 50 business people who had changed her life, the foundation they had built, the love they had found. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope." Jonathan looked at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Hope Eleanor Reed." "Perfect," Maria whispered. Eleanor and Robert visited the next day, and Eleanor cried when they told the baby's middle name. "You've given us so much," she said, holding little Hope. "More than you know. Robert and I never had children of our own, but you two, you've become family, and now this little one, she's a miracle." "She is," Jonathan agreed, his arm around Maria as they watched Eleanor rock their daughter. "She absolutely is." 3 months later, on a spring morning, Maria found herself back at Parker's Diner. Tom, her former manager, had called to say he was retiring, and she wanted to see him one more time before he left. The diner looked exactly the same worn stools, same laminated menus, same smell of coffee and frying bacon. But everything else had changed. "Maria!" Tom exclaimed when he saw her. "And is this the baby? Oh, she's beautiful." "This is Hope," Maria said, adjusting the baby in her arms. "I wanted her to see where it all started." Tom smiled. "You know, I think about that night a lot, the night that CEO came in and you fed him with your last $10. I was in the kitchen and I saw you do it. I didn't say anything because I knew you'd refuse if I offered to help, but I saw, and I thought, that girl has a heart of gold." "You never told me that," Maria said, surprised. "Didn't need to. You knew who you were. You just needed the world to catch up." He gestured to the diner. "Want to sit for a minute? Coffee's on me. And before you say anything, yes, decaf." Maria laughed. She sat at the counter, the same spot where Jonathan had sat that rainy night, where her life had changed forever. The door chimed. Jonathan walked in, looking slightly hurried. "Sorry I'm late. Meeting ran long. Oh, hey, Tom." They shook hands. Jonathan slid onto the stool beside Maria, kissing her temple, gently touching Hope's cheek. "Do you ever think about that night?" Maria asked. "All the time," Jonathan admitted. "I think about how I almost didn't do it, how I stood there with my wallet thinking about how hungry I'd be the next day, how I needed that money. And then I looked at you, and I just knew I had to help." "I think about it too," Jonathan said,
how close I came to not stopping at the diner, how I almost kept walking in the rain, how my whole life hinged on a choice to step through a door. Everything hinges on choices, Maria said. We choose kindness or cruelty. We choose hope or despair. We choose love or fear. I choose you, Jonathan said, taking her hand. Every day, every moment, every choice, I choose you. And I choose you, Maria replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. They sat there, a family, watching the Seattle skyline glitter in the afternoon sun. In Maria's arms, hope stirred, made a soft sound. In Jonathan's pocket, his phone buzzed with notifications about the foundation, about business, about the hundreds of lives they were changing. But none of that mattered in this moment. What mattered was the three of them together, proof that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything, that sometimes the person you help in their darkest hour becomes the light of your life, that sometimes love doesn't ask for permission or wait for the perfect time, it just shows up on a rainy night, broken and desperate, and you choose to care. And that choice, that simple act of humanity, can transform not just one or two lives, but countless lives in ways you never imagined. Maria looked down at her daughter, then up at her husband, and felt a contentment so deep it took her breath away. This was her life now, not perfect, but real, not easy, but worth every struggle. She thought about the girl she had been a year ago, counting her last $10 and wondering if life would ever get better. If she could go back and tell that girl what was coming, that girl would never believe it. But she would do it all again, every struggle, every doubt, every fear, because all of it had led her here, to Jonathan, to hope, to a life filled with love and purpose and the knowledge that kindness really does matter. Jonathan stood, pulling her gently to her feet. Come on, let's go home. And hand in hand, their daughters secure between them, they walked into their future together.